Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about neutral palettes with a twist. I love colorful eyeshadow. It is definitely what calls to me, but now and then I want to go for something more neutral, and yet I find that tans and browns are a little bit more on the boring side. But there are neutral palettes on the market that are not boring, and I have some to highlight for you today. Of course, I said that I love colorful eyeshadow. Today's eyeshadow look was filmed. I will be linking it down below in the description box for you if you're curious. For today's look, I used the Blend Bunny Lure palette and one other, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. But, like I said, now and then it's fun to play with neutrals. I think that neutral eyeshadow definitely looks more classy, elegant, a little bit more chic or sophisticated than being a tropical fish, parrot, rainforest animal, or circus tent. Those are usually the vibes that I'm going for. I use eyeshadow as creative expression. I just want to play with color. And I like to see how I can pick two colors that don't work together and meet them in the middle in a way that feels cohesive and like, oh yeah, I totally did that on purpose. But I think that generally, if I'm going for sophistication, I'm definitely going to choose more neutral, somber tones, a little bit more downplayed. Now, I don't own any standard neutral eyeshadow palettes, and I don't necessarily own the quintessential brown with a pop of blue sort of palette either. The neutral leaning palettes that I own are a little bit special, a little bit different. So I want to start off with the Geodes palette from What's Up Beauty. Now, this is the palette which, if you're looking at it, you see a lot of, it's got a lot of neutrals, right? We've got lots of browns, a mustard yellow, and then a couple other tones. Like there's a lot of mauvey purple in here, but it's not very purple. It's not very berry. It's just soft and quiet. Works beautifully with the brown tones that are in here, even work beautifully with this mustard shade over here. These two are a little bit more warm toned, and then you have these pops of color. They're not the, like I said, the brown with a pop of blue. That's not what this is. You have a yellow shimmer, a green shimmer, and then a couple purple shimmers that really are purple. But this shimmer here has a lot of brown in it. It's a browny purple. Over here you have a peachy brown. Here there's sort of a soft rosy gold sort of shimmer. And overall, I look at this palette and I think, yeah, it's definitely neutral, but it has other colors that are brought in to work with the neutral but still keep it on the down low. However, the formula of What's Up Beauty is amazing. Every time I use this palette, not only do I get a completely beautiful look, but it's so easy to get. It is so easy to work with this formula. They are soft, they're buildable, they're very easy to work together. If you want to get some contrast or want to merge them smoothly, you can do either. It's a great formula, and this is a nice neutral with a twist because you've got the more soft brown mauve leaning tones with a couple interesting colors as well. I have two favorite neutral palettes, and one of them is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau Palette. I feel that ABH is trying to reinvent themselves with their last 3 or 4 palette releases. This one I think is the most special. When I first saw this palette, it kind of caught me off guard as far as, wow, why am I even drawn to a neutral palette? But when I analyze it, let me tell you what I see. I see some cooler neutrals that sort of lean warm, and then some warmer neutrals that kind of lean cooler. So everything's sort of in the middle. Nothing is completely on one side of the spectrum. And then there's this pop of purple, which really puzzled a lot of people, but I think it makes perfect sense. And literally every time I use this purple with any of the colors in the palette, even like these more peach or terracotta sorts of tones that you might not think purple works with, it does. There's something about the undertones of this palette which are very complementary and also flattering on lots of different skin tones. I'm not sure, it's kind of a little bit magical to me because I can't quite put my finger on it. It's just something about the undertones of the colors. They work with each other even though there's a lot of differences, and they work with lots of different skin tones. It's quite special. You can certainly get a lot of neutral looks out of this palette. If you ignore that purple entirely, you can lean more warm peachy, you can lean more green over here. You could go smoky with this shadow and maybe this one's a bit blue, this one's a bit rosy. There's a lot going on in a smaller palette, and like I said, those undertones really make it stand out. There's something unique about this palette among its competitors within the more mainstream brands. Now here's a palette which you might not think of, but I consider green, certain greens maybe, to be more a neutral color. So I've pulled out the Child from ColourPop. This is, I think, their most unique color story of their Star Wars collaboration palettes. I really like this palette. This is obviously mainly sage green, and then it has different neutrals. Now this one has fallen out, but it was a very warm gold shimmer. There are 4 different tones of the more sage green. You've got 2 mattes, and then these 2 are shimmers. This one has more silver undertones, and this is a satin shadow, so it's not matte or shimmer, it's in the middle. It's a matte with sparkles, but it's got foresty warmth to it. And then you have these brown shades here. I love that there is a mid to light tone and a deeper tone because you can get the contrast. I love the contrast in my looks. And then as far as the shimmers go, this one's a beautiful inner corner highlight, brow bone highlight, lay it all over the lid and just get a really light, beautiful wash of sparkle. These over here, they're different because you can make your look more cool toned with a silvery shimmer, but it still has a hint of green, or you can make your look more warm toned and work with those browns and make it just a bit cozier with a gold shimmer. I think the palette is quite versatile. It has lightness, it has depth, it has highlight, it has a couple different colors. Overall, it's very neutral, but it's neutral done well. A palette that is pretty popular right now is the Muse palette from Cosmic Brushes. This is the sister to the Serenity, which blew up the internet, and their newest release is the Delicious Delights, which is the pastel. This palette is definitely more neutral leaning. It's not entirely neutral. You know, you've got lime green and purples and pinks, but overall, maybe 70 to 80% of this palette is neutral leaning. And again, it's neutral done well. Now, remember we talked about neutral with a pop, right? So in a 10-pan palette, you might have 2 really interesting pops of color that bring in a different element that you can add to your looks. This is on a larger scale. It's the same concept though. It's mainly neutral leaning tones with a few pops of color, 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 color. Overall though, it's certainly more quiet, more somber. You have mauves, you have peach, you have greens, you have this verdigris sort of color over here. You've got earthy tones over here, more grounding tones, but it's also versatile with lightness and depth, warm tones, cool tones. There's a lot of variety that you can get, but almost everything is going to be a little more downplayed. I just finished doing a week of Muse. Week of series is where I do an entire week of uploads using just one palette. I will card above the playlist for you. I've done week of Serenity, week of Muse, week of a few different BH palettes and Juvia's Place palettes and Udenzai palettes. So the week of Muse, I uploaded 4 different looks. Most of them were somber and quiet and downplayed, but the first one I did was quite green and I used this shadow rather liberally, I believe. But anyway, overall, this is a nice, soft, neutral palette with a twist. The other of my 2 very favorite neutral with a twist palettes is the Sea Talk palette from Udenzai. This is when they collaborated with Lauren from Laura May Beauty. This palette is amazing. If you can find or get your hands on this, whether you pay full price or buy it secondhand, I cannot more highly recommend this palette. I love this palette. Okay, let's talk about it. Initially, when you open it up, you do see the pops because they stand out the most. But 4 of these colors are neutral. And then these 2 over here they're blues. So they're not very neutral, but they're less vibrant and bold and in your face. So you have cool toned brown, warm toned brown, and then these cooler blues over here that are dusky and smoky and cold. And then you have these beautiful, vibrant, bright pops in the middle. This yellow is such an interesting shade because it's not a true yellow. It actually has a bit of a lean towards green. It's really interesting. This shadow here, Iridescent Shell, is a topper shade that transforms your look. It is not the pink that you see. It might be if you were to lay it down with a bunch of pinks, but when you lay it with a brown, it's going to lean more brown. When you lay it with the blues, it's going to lean more blue, always with that underlying pink tone, but not like an electric pink on your face. And then this purple right here, is it a purple? Is it a blue? Is it a silver? It's somewhere in the middle. And of course the green. So I do view this palette as neutral with a twist because the mattes of this palette are neutral. None of these are mattes. The mattes are neutral. So you're going to lay down a neutral base and then really bring it to life with something quite special. This is an amazing palette. I love it. And finally, the last palette to talk about in today's video, because while I have a decent sized eyeshadow palette collection, I don't own that many neutrals. Here is the La Cienega palette from Adept Cosmetics. This was part of a mystery box. It was part of a bit of a debacle. I can card above a video for you where I use it for the first time and talk about the drama surrounding it. But aside from the drama, I think this palette is quite great, actually. It's not my absolute favorite. Again, I don't love neutrals, but I do really like it. I bought this one because I knew the Adept shimmer formula, and I'd heard that their mattes had improved in quality, and I wanted some more neutrals in my collection because I have so many colors. I wanted to be able to pull out a standard brown, and I couldn't think of hardly any palettes where there was just a standard brown. So I saw this and I thought, okay, these are mainly cool toned neutrals, which work for my skin undertones. We have some amazing pops of bright, super sparkly shadows down here, which work with these. I also own the Adept Plain Jane palette, so I could use their neutral mattes and bring in an amazing shimmer from the other palette, because that one is full shimmers. And I liked the assortment of mattes themselves. I like that you have some light shades, some medium shades, and then a couple of deep shades. This is a black, but then these over here are deeper browns, something more standard, which I didn't have anywhere else. And then over here is a very light blush pink sort of color, and then this reddish lipstick color, which could work with any of the other mattes, and it could also work with this shimmer in particular. It would be so pretty. I think that this palette is well balanced. It has a good range within the mattes, and then of course the shimmers. 4 of the shimmers are more like green blue leaning, but they are different enough. I use this to get maybe a smoky eye if I'm trying to, again, play things down a little bit, but then perhaps do a pop at the inner corner or make the lower lash line explosive with color and sparkle. I think that this is a good neutral palette with a twist. And the formula is good. I mean, I don't have too much experience with Adept in general. I know their shimmer formula more than their matte formula, but I like it. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. It's a good staple palette, but it's not only a staple palette because of that bottom row of sparkle. And there you have it. That is a short but sweet video about neutral palettes with a twist. I would love to hear some of your suggestions.
By the way, I was thinking about it just a minute ago. I could do an entire video showing you my favorite neutral palettes with a twist. I think I'm gonna do it. I've done it before. I was thinking like...
Let me know in the comments, what are some of your favorite neutral palettes? What are some things that you think are obvious and I didn't even mention? I'm only talking about palettes I own. There are other palettes on the market which would fit into this category, but I couldn't actually show them to you, so I decided to just stick with palettes that I actually have in my collection. But I think it's fun to look at my collection through different lenses all the time. It's so much fun to say what would work under that umbrella or that title. Thank you for being with me here today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I do hope that you will consider liking and subscribing before you go if you want to see more. As soon as I hit 500 subscribers, which at the time of filming, I have been vacillating between 494 and 497 for weeks. But once I hit 500 subscribers, I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything video. I already have a whole pile of questions that are loaded up. So once I hit 500, that's another video I'll be doing. If you like this content, do remember to come back and check out more of my videos. I've got playlists. I've got hundreds of videos on my channel. I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you guys. Bye.